If you live in the north, you know there are days when it's a soup kind of day, and there are days like this when it's a chili kind of day. There's nothing to do outside. We got probably 6 inches of new snow last night. So I thought today would be a perfect day to get in the kitchen and make a big double batch of my chili, get some in the pantry for winter lunches and dinners, and I'll show you how I make it. I'm gonna go put my hair up, grab an apron, I'll meet you right back here. Okay, we're in the kitchen. This is something that's gonna take, actually this will have taken me sort of 3 days because I pulled beef last night and it's not quite defrosted. This is 3 1.5 pound packs of our ground beef. So I need to defrost those. 3 times 1.5 is 4.5, right? And you're gonna need to pull beans. I soaked them overnight. So I just took, this is 4 cups of red beans. And you can do, you can do other beans probably. I never have. I always do kidney beans. These might be ones we planted too and harvested, I'm not sure. But I took them, take them out of the bag if you're gonna buy them, give them a quick sort through, make sure that it's just beans that you're putting in the water. I always give them a quick rinse. And then they have been sitting, these have been sitting overnight, and I'll show you what these look like, but that's just to get them to plump up just a little bit and crack open and be ready to cook. And what I'm gonna do, this is my favorite chili recipe, and you're gonna be able to add on from here. So what we're gonna do is make the base recipe that I always make. And this isn't 5-alarm chili. I like it to have that little bit of little heat going, you know, that aftertaste that hits you that's warm and cozy, but I don't want alarms in my chili. I don't wanna be running for water or milk or anything. I don't like 5-alarm anything, no alarms. So this is, you know, Aunt Steph's ultra perfect chili. Like if you love Nally chili, that's about the level of heat. So I'm gonna show you my base recipe. I'll post it in the links down below. I'm gonna drain these and I'll probably rinse them again. I like to drain the water off and even give them another rinse. And I'm gonna get this meat finished defrosting and we'll be back and I'll show you how I make the recipe in this giant pot. We're just gonna leave these to sit here and drain a little bit while I cook the ground beef. All right, we're just gonna start adding the beef to a big pan and we're gonna have to do it in batches. So I have the beef browning in fairly large batches, just by itself with no seasoning. I'm not salting or peppering any of this, but I am going to add this much garlic to 4.5 pounds of ground beef, just to have a little bit of extra flavor in there. So we'll get that mixed in and finish browning the rest of this beef. Once you have your beef browned and you've got some garlic in there, I just take a slotted spoon. We're gonna just transfer it all into this big pot, and this will eventually fill up with all the things. So what I'm going to be using instead of fresh tomato and having to skin them and all that, I'm using 2 quarts of whole canned tomatoes with their liquid, 2 quarts of water, and these are the spices we're gonna be using. So we've got white wine vinegar, onion powder, garlic powder, salt and pepper, chili powder and cayenne powder, cumin, and Worcestershire sauce. So I'm gonna get that stuff in the pot with the meat here as we continue, and we'll add the water and the beans. And then from there, you can kind of just tweak this to suit yourself. I mean, you can add more stuff to the meat there if you want. And we're gonna be playing around with adding more of these to taste as this comes to a finish. But this is where you could up the cayenne if you want some extra heat. You could change the cumin. You can play around with all of this. Add some more garlic if you want. Put real onion. You could do beef stock instead. You could change out the meat for turkey if you want to make a non-beef version. So there's lots to play with. But this is just a really great basic version. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and dump those beans that were sitting. They're gonna go in the pot. And that's a nice amount of beans and beef. And you can play with your ratios too. I mean, this is 4.5 pounds of beef and 4 cups of originally dried beans. So there's a lot more beans than 4 cups. Oh my goodness, they go probably 4 times. That's probably 16 cups of beans easily. So watch the beans. The next thing we're gonna do is put the canned tomatoes and the liquid. I'm just gonna put the liquid and the tomato right in on top of these beans and meat. And I've got my big old tall wooden spoon. So we're just gonna add those. And these are easy, these are whole tomatoes, so it'd be easier if they were in a wide mouth jar, but there's that. You can set that aside. We're gonna stir that around a bit. We're going to add the white wine vinegar, like that. We're gonna add a bunch of garlic and onion powder both. And these are the things, again, you can play with, and I definitely will play with them. That's why I'm not posting what I'm putting in right now. This is salt and pepper, quite a bit of salt. But you can go easy on the salt because you can't unsalt something, and pepper, and I might probably bump up a lot more pepper later as we go. This is chili powder, and then cayenne powder, and this is where I talked about I don't want so much heat. So this is actually only about a half a teaspoon, and I will usually go, I start small because if it's too warm, again, you can't unheat something once you got that heat in there. So I'm gonna start with literally just the 1/4 teaspoon of that, and we will increase it to taste as we go along. This is cumin powder and a little shot of Worcestershire sauce. And that's that for now, and then we're gonna put water. This is 2 quarts of water going in just to start with. Okay, and you can see, we're just gonna stir all of that wonderfulness together, and then I'm gonna put this on a big burner and get it heating up because those beans are still very hard even though they soaked overnight. We're gonna start cooking this, get it up to a nice hard simmer, not necessarily a boil, but a simmer / low boil. So let's get that over some heat, and basically we're just gonna come back and check it. And what you're gonna watch for as you go along here, the liquid will absorb into these beans as they cook. So you're gonna wanna watch your liquid level and like how soupy this is, because you don't want these beans to soak up all the water and then have more of a dry chili because you've run out of liquid. So you probably will be adding more water, and I will put in the description again, the recipe below will include everything that went into this finished pot when it's done. So I started with 2 quarts here though. So your base thing that we started with as far as volume so far, we're starting with 4.5 pounds of beef, 4 cups of dried beans soaked overnight, 2 full quarts of whole tomatoes with their liquid, and 2 quarts of water, and then all of the spices that will be in the mix below. All right, so we've just turned this on, and I'm just gonna let it cook. And it is kind of an all-day process. So like I started this morning, and that's why I don't, if I'm gonna can this, I'm not gonna can it today. So what I always do, cook this to where, and if you're canning it, it doesn't need to be finished soft beans by the time you're done cooking it before you can it. But I will stop this cooking later today once I've adjusted all the flavor, and then I'm going to turn it off and put it in the refrigerator overnight and let it get nice and cold and hard. And then all of that fat that's in this pan from the beef is going to rise to the surface of this chili overnight. And then tomorrow morning, I'll show you what that looks like, but we'll pull it out of the fridge, and you just basically take a spatula or a slotted spoon or whatever and just take off, and you'll find a layer, depending on your meat, you'll find a layer of solid, basically solid fat that has solidified overnight, and you can just get under it, take it out, and get rid of it before you can this. If you're not canning it, don't worry about it. It just makes it yummy. But it's gonna help not have that floating to the top in the finished canned jars. So for now, we're leaving all that lovely fat in here. I'm just gonna kind of watch it, get it up to a nice sort of bubbly low boil, and then we're gonna put a lid on it and just let it cook for a really long time. Come back every once in a while, make sure the water's not boiling, the liquid's not absorbing too much. And then once you get it where it's cooked quite a bit, then we're gonna start tasting for flavor. And I like to just keep a little spoon handy just for this. So and I'll do it now just because this broth is kind of stirred together and we're warming up. So I'm just gonna give it a taste. And that tastes like it's headed in the right direction. And if you can believe it, this much, all of this has about 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne powder, red pepper cayenne powder in it, and I can feel it in my throat. So if you don't like 5-alarm chili, start small with the cayenne. Chili powder, yes, that's just a nice flavor, but the cayenne go easy on yourself, because you will regret it if you don't like hot stuff, because you cannot. I don't know a kitchen trick to unhot something. So I think I'm making up words as we go here. So this has that basically a quarter of a teaspoon of cayenne powder is all that's in this. And I may not add more as we go. We'll see. Once this starts to absorb into the beans and the flavor starts to kind of meld together, we'll taste test it and see. And I'll always usually end up adding another round of a lot of those just to kind of bring up the body of flavor here. But it's such a nice base recipe. Oh my goodness, you guys, what a great recipe to start with. And if you just love, like if you love Nally chili, just that, like that perfect blend of just all the right things and not too hot, this is going to be your go-to recipe. I can just about guarantee it. So it is the next day, and I took this off the stove, and this is what you're going to see the second day. And you can see there is a lot of the orange fat. I scraped a little bit off the sides here, but there wasn't a ton because our beef is really lean. So I'm going to go ahead and start warming this up because we're going to get it in jars pretty soon. But if you were wanting to eat this, look how thick this is. So we didn't add any more liquid, and the beans are still absorbing liquid. So they absorbed through the night. So really this is best if you want to make this even for a meal. I would do it the night before because it's going to be better that second day and the beans will have had time to absorb more of the liquid. And if you want to have it the same night, I would do this whole recipe that I'll have down below, but you can just use canned beans, and then you can just add your meat and spices, and then you could eat it just, you know, pretty quickly. You don't have to let it cook for 2 days or whatever I've just done. So I'm gonna get this warming up and stir it around and just kind of make sure it's all right. But the flavoring and the seasoning was all just right at the end of the day yesterday when I put this in the refrigerator. But look how nice and thick. Like from what you just saw in that last little clip to this the next day. And these are just about right. Top this with your favorite cheese and you have the perfect winter warm-up lunch or dinner. I hope this recipe gives you a great starting point for this classic comfort food that we all love. If you'd like to see how to finish this by canning it to have it in the pantry for future meals, you can check out part 2 of that process in the video linked right here, and I'll see you over there. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.